The South African Armoured Corps was established on the 18th of October 1946. One Special Service Battalion, which was established in May 1933, mainly to provide jobs for the young South Africans during the Depression years, became the first Armour Permanent Force unit and is the nucleus of the Armour Corps. It formed part of the 11th Armoured Brigade as the Permanent Force unit, along with 3 active Citizen Force Armour units that were registered. In 1942, SSB was organized, trained and equipped as an armoured car regiment with Marmon Harrington Mark III armoured vehicles. 1943 saw the regiment forming part of 6th South African Division, and it was retrained as a tank regiment on Sherman M4 tanks, and as such took part in the Italian campaign until after the Second World War. The oldest armoured citizen force unit is the Natal Mounted Rifles, established in 1854 as the Royal Durban Rangers. The unit converted to armour in 1941 as a reconnaissance company during the Western Desert Campaign. This unit also claims to be the first to mount an anti-tank gun on an armoured car. It was a captured Italian 47mm gun. The second oldest regiment, the Prince Alfred's Guard, was established in 1856 as the Port Elizabeth Volunteer Rifle Corps. This unit became the first South African volunteer unit to receive the Queen's and regimental colours. These colours were received on 6th of May 1876. In 1877, it also became the first armour regiment to receive battle honours. 1943 saw the unit being converted to a tank regiment to take part in the Italian campaign. The Pretoria Regiment was also converted to a tank regiment to join the 6th South African Armoured Division. The armaments arsenal of the South African Armoured Corps consisted mainly of equipment used during the Second World War. The Sherman M4A 176mm gun, the Sherman M4 105mm howitzer, and the Sherman M4 17-pounder Firefly. These vehicles formed the main battle tank arsenal. For reconnaissance, the Corps used the M3A1 Stuart Light tank, better known as the Honey, and the Never Say Die South African-built Mark IV Marmon Harrington armoured car. The Ford Lynx Scout car was used for liaison. A number of armoured vehicle Royal Engineers, AVRE, were also purchased, such as the Churchill AVRE fitted with a spigot mortar, the Churchill AVRE Arc used for gap crossing, and the Churchill AVRE bridge layer. These vehicles were eventually replaced with more modern equipment, while some were used right up to the late 70s. With the establishment of the Corps, a requirement for instructors arose. Thus, the establishment in 1946 of the Armour Training Branch. The staff of this branch were drawn from one SSB. With the reorganization of the Union Defence Force, the training branch moved to new and bigger quarters in 1952 as an armour training wing. This wing, together with the artillery, formed the newly established School of Artillery and Armour. The Armour Wing moved to Bloemfontein in 1966 to establish the School of Armour, which was officially opened in September 1967. The modernization program started as early as 1952 with the purchase of 200 Centurion tanks in Britain, later to be followed by Comet tanks. Ferret, Mark I and Mark II Scout cars, and also the Saracen armoured personnel carrier. The vehicles mentioned were not wholly suited to the South African climatic and terrain conditions, with vehicles being unreliable. Furthermore, a United Nations arms embargo was being imposed. This hastened South Africa to undertake arms development. The first major project since World War II to commence in South Africa was the Eland Armoured Car Project. 100 Panhard AML 245 light armoured cars, which was part of a contract with France, were received in 1962. This led to the commencement of the first locally manufactured Panhard armoured cars in 1964. By 1970, after many local modifications and with the local content increased to 80%, the Panhard was renamed Eland. The Eland armoured car became a formidable fighting vehicle during the Border War and was known by troopies as the Noddy car. This innovation continued with the upgrading and modernization of the Centurion tank fleet, resulting in the Olifant combat tank. The Olifant was the first reliable tank ever used by the South African Armoured Corps. The formidable, versatile Ratel infantry combat vehicle was another new development to replace the older generation Ferrets and Saracens. The Ratel was modified into a number of different variants and is widely used in the South African Armoured Corps. The most versatile of them all was the Ratel 90. This variant had the Eland 90 turret mounted and replaced the Eland 90 during the Angolan War. Besides armoured fighting vehicle development, the South African Armoured Corps went ahead in other fields such as night vision equipment and driver scopes and gun sights, armoured crew protective clothing and crew kit bags, ammunition for the armour fighting vehicle's main armament, such as canister ammunition for the 60mm mortar and practice ammunition for the 84mm gun for the Centurion was developed. The experience gained from the border campaign and the Angolan War proved to be invaluable in the success of arms development. Armour operations started in 1968 with a squadron of Eland 60 armoured cars from 1 SSB being deployed on the border. They were responsible for patrolling the borders along the Zambezi River, Southwest Africa and Angola. This area covered a distance of approximately 1,680 kilometers. Other tasks carried out were escort duties of convoys and VIPs and assisting the South African police with roadblocks. The first fatality on the border occurred without firing a single round in conflict. A trooper from 1 SSB was killed in an armoured car accident in November 1968. Before the shuttle service of the famous Flossie, the Hercules C-130 aircraft, the troops were transported to the border by train. This troop train journey took anything from 4.5 to 5 days. Many armour boys will remember the Coast beer or sock beer, which was the best method of cooling a beer without a fridge. The low-intensity revolutionary border war was escalating, and in 1973, the South African Defence Force took over the duties from the South African Police. For these tasks, the SAAC had to rely on members from the small permanent force and conscript volunteers. This period was known to SAAC personnel as the period of crash training, and then the Long March. The Long March was the Eland Armoured Cars clandestine road movement from Bloemfontein to Ondangwa, a distance of 2,400 kilometers covered over a period of 6 days. Operation Savannah was South Africa's first experience of a political war and started off as a clandestine operation in 1975. During this operation, both Eland 60 and 90 saw action for the first time. The Eland armoured car, with their crews, built a formidable reputation of combat achievement and bravery. Operation Savannah ended 27 March 1976. The border campaign started in 1976. This period saw many changes taking place in the South African Armoured Corps. Amongst others, intensified training. Outdated equipment had to be replaced, and anti-tank equipment to counter the increasing tank threat had to be obtained. This period also saw numerous destroy, disrupt and capture enemy equipment operations being carried out across the border. Armoured Corps personnel played an important role in these operations. The raids across the border saw the Eland armoured cars being replaced by the Ratel 60 and 90. They did not only have better mobility and longer operational ranges, they could also carry more ammunition. August the 23rd, 1978, saw the blackest day in the history of the South African Armoured Corps. 8 members of one SSB were killed when a 122mm rocket fired from Zambia into the military base at Katima Mulilo exploded in a bungalow. Between August 1987 and July 1988, forces clashed in the biggest land battles ever fought in the history of Africa. South Africa launched 2 operations during this period, namely Operations Modular and Hooper. During these operations, South Africa used tanks for the first time since the Second World War. The Olifant tanks crossed the Angolan border on the 27th of October 1987. During this movement, the Olifant tank squadron took its first casualty when an unfortunate lieutenant found himself sharing his cramped commander's station with a deadly black mamba snake. He was bitten but lived to tell the tale. After this incident, tank crews learned to thwart the snakes that fell through open hatches with handheld fire extinguishers. The battle was a fierce combination of modern warplanes, missiles and tanks fighting in rough terrain. This conflict saw the Olifant tank living up to its formidable and reliable reputation and proudly crewed by personnel of the South African Armoured Corps. Sad to say, however, 3 tanks were lost due to anti-tank mines and were not recovered. Another vehicle which proved its worth for the first time was the Ratel ZT-3 anti-tank missile system, also crewed by armoured personnel, accounting for numerous enemy tanks and other armoured vehicles. There was no time to remonstrate. You see shell bursts, the flames, the contacts, the dying, but strangely you do not hear the shooting, although there's a hellish noise all around, said one commander. The armour men are calm, said another combat force commander. This had a calming effect during battle. Once again, the armour men passed with pennants flying. South African forces withdrew from Angola on the 30th of April 1988. The Armoured Corps was not always deployed on border duty, but were also committed within the borders with other tasks like assisting flood victims in the Orange Free State in 1988. Meanwhile, development in the arms technology continued in the form of the Rooikot armoured car. With a concept sketch being completed as early as 1968 and user requirements being compiled as far back as 1975, the Rooikot armoured car was a dream come true with its launch in 1989. The Olifant Mark 1A tank is being phased out and is to be replaced by the Olifant Mark 1B. Years of technology in South Africa has culminated in a South African prototype main battle tank demonstrator, or TDD. This technological development could only take place with the dedicated support of the South African arms industry, Arms Corps and the Research and Development section of the School of Armour. Dedication, effective training and excellent esprit de corps were the key elements in making the armormen a formidable force. For training, a modern miniature shooting range was designed to cater for all fighting vehicles. More modern training equipment was tested, evaluated and produced, such as Roykot Armoured Car Gunnery Training Simulator and the Driver Training Simulator. Battle training simulators and simulators for rattle driving. ZT-3 missile flight control and heavy truck driver training simulator. Ceremonies and traditions are an integral part of the military lifestyle of the South African Armoured Corps. It can be traced back as far as 1934, when SSB made the retreat ceremony in South Africa famous. Traditions such as the Gunner's Eve, to celebrate the completion of the first live firing practice of recruit gunners, where a brew, whatever it is drunk out of a shell case of the particular vehicle. Or riding the armor horse on completion of the final events at a formal dinner. Another tradition adopted by the School of Armour is to start the yearly training program with the lighting of the armour flame, which symbolises esprit de corps,
enthusiasm, courage, honor and discipline.
Mechanized review parades have also become unique. To encourage armour traditions, culture, esprit de corps and comradeship, an armour association was established on the 30th of April 1993. Another milestone in the history of the South African Armoured Corps was the integration of officers and men from the former TBVC, MK and APLA forces, as well as the bridging training conducted at the School of Armour and one special service battalion. After all these years, the South African Armoured Corps never had a badge of its own. The cluster of Proteas, although embossed with the SAAC, SRPK, was in fact the badge of one special service battalion. Now, for the first time, there appeared a badge unique to the South African Armoured Corps. The mailed fist symbolizes physical force and aggression. The laurel wreath symbolizing glory and honor. A king protea, the national flower, closes the wreath. Pectore sicut ferro, the motto of the Armoured Corps, appropriately means with a chest of steel.
I pray thee, Heavenly Father, please hear this tanker's prayer and send an angel to me for my tank and crew to care.
50 years of glory. The South African Men in Armour. We salute you.
Please hear this tanker's prayer and send an angel to me for my tank and crew to care.